All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. This is Engineering Evolved with myself, Brandon E. Grant, and my co-host, Pavel Krupa. Episode number 2. So we got through the first one. Pavel, there's a statistic out there that says I think it's like 90% of podcasts don't go beyond episode 7. So we've got a benchmark to hit.
Yeah, we gotta keep pushing. But I'm sure we can make it.
I have no intentions of stopping. So we are here at our regular time, what is going to be regular moving forward, which is Wednesday evenings at 4 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Mountain, 6 Central, and 7 Eastern as we roll across at least the U.S. So today Pavel and I were sending back messages back and forth of what do we want to talk about. And we both kind of agreed that managing stress as a general overall topic is something that's really important to talk about in engineering. And then specifically, we're going to talk about, Pavel has an experience of coming from not being from the U.S. and coming over and trying to work inside of the U.S., as a brilliant roboticist, with your, I think you said master's degree in robotics.
Yeah, that's correct.
Coming into the U.S. and the stress and the struggle and trying to find work and just all the challenges that are there. So, just Pavel, what's when we talk about managing stress, like where do you want to start the conversation today? Because we've got a lot that we can talk about. Like when you talk about managing stress inside of an engineering situation, inside of an engineering department or a company that's really high tension, like what comes up for you?
I think the most important, at least from my side, would be to being aware of the stress, because I think sometimes people are not even aware that they are in stress. They kind of try to put this either on the side or like they don't really accept the fact that that's a stressful situation. And what I've seen is like one of two things happens. Either you'll be okay with it and it will get to you later. So like, okay, all of the emotions kind of fallen down. Now the situation has been resolved and you are like, oh, that was really stressful for me, but like I didn't know at the time. And then there's the second part when straight away, okay, I'm nervous. I don't know what to do. Like I'm being paralyzed. So I think that will be like the first step and the first thing that we have to notice, like as we approach the stress, be aware of it and know how to cope with it. Like have some techniques or have something that will help you to either deal with it or create some steps that will guide you through the process of going through it. That's what I think. What about you, Brandon?
So like when we talk about managing stress, like coming through engineering school, where it was just these intense, classes with finals and all the classes had their tests lined up the same thing. And it was hours and hours and all nighters. Like one of the things that they don't talk about is that through engineering school, we're trained to handle stress, right? We're also trained sometimes not positively to pick up some poor habits and poor ways of managing stress, right? And so when I think about managing stress now, I really look at it as kind of two fronts. I look at it as the way that I used to manage stress, right? The before times. Here's how I used to manage stress. It used to be a lot of really unhealthy ways to go about it, right? It was alcohol, it was Adderall, it was, food, it was, gaming or fantasy sports or sports, all of the holics, right?
Mm-hmm.
You build up this tension and you build up the stress with compressed, forced work, and then you go home and you have to let it out somewhere, right?
Yep.
There are some really healthy ways to do it. And I generally, for a good portion of my career, participated in the really unhealthy ones. I drank extremely heavily. I used Adderall to try and stay focused for ADHD. And that wasn't necessarily a stress, but that was something that I used to kind of overcome all these negative things that I did. I ate. I would very often go and just eat my stress away. And that was something that didn't really work for me, right? I would, obviously, if you're overeating calories or overeating food, that's something that doesn't really work, right? And I would take and I'd be like, all right, I've got this analytical brain and I got super into fantasy sports. And I'd be like, I want to go into fantasy sports. And I'd spend 20 to 40 hours a week sometimes, like half of my time not at work. And sometimes it'd be during school and during work, like focusing on fantasy sports, people trying to tabulate. And so you could use your analytical brain, but you weren't actually relieving the stress in a healthy way. So that's the before time, right?
Yeah.
Since I got into personal development, what I've really found is there are some positive ways, some really healthy ways to deal with managing stress, right? So exercise, meditation, learning, communicating. There's a lot of different things you can do that properly manage stress. And so I want to talk about some of those. Hey, hi. This is my youngest daughter. She's just saying hi on the podcast. Say hi, Pavel.
Hi, Pavel.
Say
Hey,
hi,
how are you?
all of the internet.
Hi, all of the internet.
Hey, will you do me a favor, please? Will you please leave the office for a few minutes and will you shut the door behind you? Yes. I love you very much.
Crystal packs, and guess what?
Okay.
I took out 2 real life crystals.
Awesome. Will you do me a favor? Will you shut the door on your way out, please? I love you very, very much. I'll always love you. No matter what. Love, Dad. So being able to handle stress like your kid walks in on your podcast.
Exactly.
Breathing is a big part of it. So like, what about you? What's your favorite way to manage your stress? Because I could go on for hours about the different specific methods, but like, what's your favorite way to manage?
So I think for everyone it will be different, but if you ask me personally, I would say affirmations. So find something that actually help you to go through that. Find something. For me, it will be like words and like just kind of talking to myself. Hey, it's good to do this. It's good to do that. Like, it's okay. This happened. You've been here. You've done that, and so on and so on and so on. And now, depending on what do you think will work for you, maybe my meditation. So I personally tried the meditation before. I think it's a great tool to cope with the stress. However, if you look at it, it might not work for everyone. Like for me personally, I need to get to a state where I feel comfortable, when I feel calm and I can meditate. Like for me in the morning, for example, it will be a great time. However, the way my day is planned in the morning, I usually do not have much time to do it. Probably if I plan better, I could, but that's not something that will work for me. So I stick with affirmations. That's number one. And second thing is like lately I've been trying to do kind of like a, let's say, physical stress relief, and I'm talking actually more on the spot stress. So if something hit me like that unexpected, so like right now, let's say your daughter walked in and we had a blessing to say hi to her. So that's what I would do when that hits me from like unknown perspective. Yeah, I was not prepared for it. Okay, I have to deal with it now. So what do I do? How do I get through it? How do I manage the stress at the moment? And then if you talk about the stress, like after it happens, so like after the whole day or after a week, whatever, definitely nature. So going out to the nature, just touching the ground, touching the trees. Music will be the second thing probably that I would say. And those will be the 2 big ones that I do that help me like after the very stressful week or very stressful day. I can go out, let's say, chill out and actually get a little bit of that positive energy and kind of reset my brain, reset my energy to more positive side. That's what I do. But I have one question for you because you mentioned something that's interesting for me.
Yeah.
Have you been taught at school, university, somewhere how to manage stress, or were you aware that there is so much stress coming your way? Because I think that's interesting. Because from my side, I don't think that there was any preparation per se. The only thing I was always told is like, hey, it is going to be stressful, but nobody ever told me like how stressful it will be or like how to manage that stress. So I'm very interested. How is it for you?
Yeah. So I don't ever remember anybody talking about like, here are the positive ways to manage stress, right? They might have been there. If they did, it might have gone in one ear and out the other. I never picked up on it. It was, you got to remember back when we were 18 through 25 or whatever, I went to school for 7 years. You couldn't tell me. There's a lot of things you couldn't tell me. And so if you told me the right way to measure, to do stress, I'd be like, yeah, I'm going to go for a run and then I'm going to go drink, 12 beers, or I'm going to go for a run and then I'm going to go do whatever. Like it was really, there's no constructive instruction in school about proper ways to manage stress. I don't know if there is now. I have a very good friend of mine who's a professor at Colorado School of Mines. And we talk sometimes about the difference between now and then. And we talked about like collaboration. It's not this subject, but like they actually have ABET requirements now in order to be an accredited school where you have to have some conversation about collaboration between engineering, which is great because that was not necessarily something that we had a huge part of. I think we had labs, but it wasn't like, everybody works together. It was like, you're stuck with this person and I hope you guys work out.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there was definitely not a focus on the right way to manage stress. I think in today's day and age, with so much more attention to mindfulness practices, I had the pleasure of working with 3 interns this summer at the firm that I was working at, and each of them were like, I felt like they were way more put together than I was when they went through school. Like they exercised regularly, they had constructive hobbies, they had a lot more intuitive thoughtfulness than we did. Like with us, it was like, dude, this is really hard. Let's drink. I know that was my experience, but like, I feel that was a very common experience for people in our generation. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's why I'm asking. I think that was something that I really missed from my studies or my school because, I think I graduated and then I got hit with that like a brick wall of work. And then like, let's say when I done non-engineering works, that was still a little bit of stress in it. But the moment I entered the engineering field, that was like a huge change for me. Therefore, I'm like, well, it would be nice if like nowadays schools, universities, colleges, whomever is giving the education for the engineers, for the future engineers, that they will make them aware about it. Because like I have an example of my wife that's currently studying as well, and she has subjects where they teach her like, hey, you're going to do a stressful job that requires like a lot of quick decision making, and there will be a lot of things coming towards you. So like
Right.
we don't want you to freak out, but we want you to be aware that that's coming towards you. And I think that's great. I think that's something that I missed during my education. That's why I asked, because I think it's very important right now for the young generation to be aware that, hey, this is something you're going to face with the moment you enter the engineering job.
Absolutely. One of the things I want to do is I want to start doing speaking at colleges just to try and share and give some of these insights to the up and coming generations, right? And I think that's a great topic to be able to have as one of your key points of the importance of managing stress. For me personally, with where I'm at, right? You and I have talked. I left my job September 1st. So I have no income coming and I'm launching this coaching business, which is super stressful, right? But for me, what I found is, and it's this morning routine that I have, right?
Mm-hmm.
This morning routine that I learned, that I put together. It's a framework. It's a go and do these things. There's 8 tasks that I do every morning that help me 8 tasks that I do every morning that help me put myself in power, right? And this idea of when you put yourself in power, it's all really just kind of ways to manage stress, right? It's, there's an exercise component, an eating component. There's a meditation and journaling component. There is learning new things about my business and the way that I make money or have an impact. That helps me kind of direct and learn and then teach, which gets your brain going. And then there's this outpouring of love to your close family and friends, right? All those 8 things every morning when you play the game, they really do help me stress out. Like I wake up some mornings completely fucking terrified right now. Terrified. And yet I know that if I get into my routine and get through the things on the other side of it, I come out where everything's in line and I'm ready to go for the day. So I think what I'm hearing both of us say is there's a lot of different ways to manage stress. And I have one more example I want to talk about with that, but there's a lot of different ways to manage stress. But I think each individual person, you just need to be able to find the way that works for you or a way that works for you. And then just remember to consistently go back to it.
Yeah, totally true.
Have you ever heard of the DISC profile? It's one of those personality profiles.
I have not.
Okay, so DISC profile is pretty cool. I have a fly in my office. The DISC profile is really cool. DISC. There's a lot of different acronyms, but I took mine with through Tony Robbins. Has the Tony Robbins site for DISC profile is amazing. It's a really good one. And I actually I did a call with one of his coaches, who one of the people who used to be a coach for him, and she helped break it down. And one of the coolest things she taught me was each of the 4 letters has their own way of kind of refreshing themselves, which you can talk about refreshing, but that's also a way to relieve stress. So depending on who you are, the way that you relieve stress or refresh yourself is different. For me, I'm a high D, so I'm very driven, and I'm a high I. I'm very influential. I like to talk, and I like to be social.
Mhm.
Surprise, surprise, right? So for me, D's refresh themselves with vigorous exercise. And then I's refresh themselves with hanging out with friends. So for me, working out with friends, having vigorous exercise in a group, like, man, that's my jam. I go there and I come back and I'm just on fire. My wife is actually an SC, which is quiet alone time and like quiet time and then like rest,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
solo quiet time. So complete opposite. Each person has their own way of managing stress. And I think that's a really key point is just because your way of managing stress works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned about the DISC profile, I heard it, but phrased a little bit different. So I heard about like people that are associated with blue color or red color, and then the red people are more like active people, and then blue are more calm people. But kind of the same principle as you described. There is one more thing when we talk about the stress and all of those things and managing with it that I would like to mention, and that is actually sometimes finding the source of the stress. I think often we are stressed and we think that we are stressed about something that we think is the main reason, but in reality this is like it's a little bit more deep in. It's like dug somewhere underneath the other stresses or dug somewhere underneath our other issues that we're having, and that is our like source problem that we're trying to mask with other issues, but not reaching to that source, not reaching that far deep in might be a problem. So we might have even like our routines, we might have our affirmations, meditations, and so on and so on. And we might be doing this, but if we keep on like building up on the source of our problem and source of our stress, what might happen like eventually that pile that was over there that was like building up will come out and like it will hit you hard. I'm saying
Right.
about this because I mentioned to you that I got sick lately, and that's exactly what happened. Like I had pile of stress like building up, like getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And basically what happened is like a day came when my body said, hey, I see that you're dealing with it, but we cannot deal with it. So we have to tell you that you have to stop. And like what happened is like I got sick, and I know that's a pattern for me because it has happened to me more than once, and I'm pretty aware of it. The problem I have with it still is like when we manage it, like okay, I know it's coming, so I can deal with it. But sometimes like okay, maybe I can hold on a day or more and try to deal with what's happening, and then my body says no, you cannot deal with it anymore. It's time to rest.
Right. Yep. Which is really alike to robots and industrial automation, right? If you
Yeah.
manage, if you think about preventative maintenance, I had a maintenance tech one time tell me that, the machine needs a window for preventative maintenance, right?
Yes, that's
Either you
correct.
give it a window or it will make a window. Like one way or
Yeah.
another, there's going to be a
Oh
window
yeah.
where you have to
Yeah.
fix a machine. And
Yeah.
humans are exactly the same way. It's exactly right. If you're not managing stress as a preventative, almost predictive, if you're
Mhm.
not managing it predictively and preventatively, it will hit you. It will take care of you. It'll knock you out.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about why this is important in the engineering field. So, something that's a little dark, but absolutely something that's critical to talk about. I did a research a little bit recently because I'm trying to serve engineers and I want to know what some of their pain points. And I looked up the suicide rates by profession and found out that engineers and architects are actually tied for a really rough list. Like they're tied at the highest white collar job by profession. They're tied for 5th on this list. And it was according to a study. And when you think about it, like I went and looked at ChatGPT just to kind of say like, hey, why is that? Like, and what it popped out is these 5 reasons as to why architects and engineers face high stress, right? So I want to read through these because they're all the things we talked about, right? So there's high pressure and responsibility. That's true.
Yeah.
Long working hours, that adds to stress. there's this economic and job security question, right? We're paid well, but also if that job goes away, there's a lot of stress that goes with it. So that job security and that desire and that want to have that job and do the work and everything that we're asked to do is really kind of a big component, right?
Yeah.
High expectations and high standards, right? You and I both worked at a place where excellence is the standard, where like it's not just, show up and do your job. You need to be excellent just to hang in and fit here, right? Gladly we both met that, but it comes with an extremely high standard. And then the last one is isolation. Just, a lot of engineers really don't work collaboratively, right?
Yep.
Engineering, I say one of my quotes is engineering is a team sport.
Mm-hmm.
But even if it's a team sport, there's so much work that's done in isolation. Hey, Pavel, I need you to go into this cell and fix this robot. We've been down for 2 hours. There's now a wall of people standing around us. Please make it get fixed in the next 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Stress, pressure, no one to help you. It's isolating, like all those come through, and all of those can add to this stress. And stress combined with mental health. I don't want to say that it's just its own thing. Anything that has to do with suicide has this mental health component. I'm not minimizing that. But stress can absolutely exacerbate that. So like when you think about that list that I gave, the high pressure, long hours, economic job security, high expectations and standards, and isolation, like those aren't necessarily going to change inside the engineering field, right?
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they will still be there. But I think it's good that you're mentioning and that people are aware of like what they're coming towards. Yeah, because you can kind of get prepared of what will happen when you enter that job and
right.
What's to come.
Yep. And the thing that I've noticed, oftentimes the people that rise the highest, like the people that grow in their career, are the ones that seem to have it all figured out, right? They're the ones that have figured out the stress. And it's not like, I remember there's one guy that walked through who was, super, super smart. But like the first thing you notice about him was he had giant biceps and great hair. Like he just took care of himself. Like he was a well put together man, like really, really well, obviously took care of himself, very disciplined just based on his physicality. And then when you talk to him, he was very well put together. He took care of himself. He wasn't obese. He wasn't overweight. He wasn't super stressed out and clearly not sleeping. Like he took care of himself. And they're correlated. If you want to grow in your career, one, if you want to survive and make it through, you've got to have stress. But two, I think that taking care of yourself and managing this stress proactively is such a huge part of that career growth.
Definitely, 100%. I agree with like every point that you said. I know that you want to also talk a little bit about coming to.
Yeah, let's switch that because we've got like 7.5 minutes left.
That's fine, but I'm trying to basically go to what you said and reference that, because to all that you said, when you move to other country, doesn't matter, like if it's going to be US, Europe, Asia, whatever country or continent you choose, except for everything that we talk about, there'll be few more things that you're going to face with. Like, for example, for me personally, it was like new language. Yeah, like English is not my native language, so you need to put time into learning it and like knowing how to talk properly, and especially like on an engineering level. Like you can know English, but then you come to like specific engineering words that you have to learn over the time. And sometimes like somebody will say something and they're like, well, what does it mean? And then, okay, you progressively learn more and more and more. So that's element number one. Element number two is the culture of the country that you're coming. So yeah, we talk about engineers mostly here, but there is additional factors coming out from the outside to you that will affect your stress level and affect how comfortable you feel at your workplace, right? So one of them, for me at least, is culture. So you come to I came to the US, and the behaviors that I've anticipated here are much different than what I was used to in Poland. Some of them were better, some of them were worse, right? We can talk about this maybe a little bit later on a different podcast, but it has been a huge hit, especially I was getting a lot of interviews in the US, and I had the pleasure of meeting one person that was born in Europe and came from Europe to the US and was living here for, I think, 7 years. And then he interviewed me. So like after going through the process of interviewing with people from the US, I faced someone that was outside of the US, like from Europe. And I was like hitting a brick wall. It was like totally different experience, extremely stressful, different verbal behavior, different like physical behavior, like totally different person. Like you would enter to a different world. That was the feeling for me. So that was additional stress component. Yeah.
So I want to understand that the person who was also from Europe was like
Yes.
a much harder, much like more strict, more closed interview, or was it just
Yeah.
so unfamiliar after you had already kind of acclimated to the US?
No, so I acclimated to the US, and I remember what was in Poland, but I kind of forgotten what happened over there, like how the work is done over there. And then like all of the memories came back. Yeah, it's like I walked to a different country at that moment when I walked inside that interview. I was like, what's happening? Like I've never seen that in here, and it was actually unpleasant experience for me because that's why I asked you about like have you been taught any of the mental development or like stress management at your school? And I think what's being done different here, at least again, I'm saying this from the experience from my wife studying here in the US, is there's a little bit more awareness to emotions, a little bit more awareness to like mental being, and a little bit more awareness of what's up to come when you chose the path that you're choosing. And I really like it because that was something I was not prepared for. And like that job interview, like I'm saying, like it brings back all of the memories. Unfortunately, the one I don't, I would like to forget. And it was like huge shock for me. Like this, my stress level spiked like immediately,
Really?
straight away. Yeah. So like that's something that someone that never worked outside of the home country might not be aware of. But that's like the cultural difference. Like I work in Asia, in Europe, in US, Mexico, and like other countries, and you will see how that changes based on the country that you're visiting, based on how people are taught and how people are being raised. Like
Right.
you go to you go to Mexico, and over there it's much more chill. It's much more family focused. When you go to work, it's not as stressful. At least for me, that was my of course my perception. Right? Everybody
Right.
can see this differently. That's what I've seen. Then you go to Europe, it's much more strict. It's like very straightforward. Not too much thinking about others. Just you say what you think without thinking about the consequences, how others might like see this. So
Right.
there is a lot of variety depending on the country that you're in. So that's an additional element of stress that's very important. Like if you're trying to work outside of your home country. Next thing is like friends or like coworkers. You move to a new place, and you're getting to the place that you don't know anyone.
Right.
And like we know, if the first impression is kind of important, right? But
Right.
then you have to kind of choose like how the people will see you. The best is to behave how you are, because if you're trying to put some mask on and you're trying to not be you in the place that you will work with, then you're going to be associated with that mask. And then the moment you try to change your behavior, try to be yourself, you'll be
Right.
seen as, hey, something is wrong with you, instead of
Uh-huh.
like straight away being yourself, showing what's going on. And again, that's going to build up stress, because you say, okay, I'm going to work or I'm going wherever, and I have to put on that face mask and like, okay, be that guy that I'm not every day. Okay, sometimes that's needed, right? Like sometimes you have to behave in a certain way when you go. I don't know, let's say you go to a theater or you go to a meeting. You have to behave a little bit different, more formal, let's say. So I'm not saying formal, informal. I'm saying just like who you are every
Right.
day.
Yeah. Being your authentic self, right?
Exactly. And
I
then
think that
again,
could be an entire topic for us at some point, is
oh
the
yeah,
importance of showing up to work authentically, right?
yeah. And one more thing that's but there's many things, but one of the things that also hit me, but that's something you can get prepared for if you're talking strictly engineering, would be just like some safety standards or some standards that the company that you will work for, because you might be taught something else. You might be taught how something was done in the place that you work at, but now you move to a different environment. There is a lot of stuff that can happen and can affect your stress levels, because you're not prepared for like the changes. So, but that's something you can prepare for, because you can gather some material beforehand, before you start work, before you move to the new workplace, and that can help with managing your stress. But
Absolutely.
the things that I pointed, those were the main points that like impacted me coming to the US, or like actually going to any other country.
Awesome. Well, Pablo, we are running up on the end of our time. We'll go a little bit over today, but really, I think this is a great topic. Thank you. Episode 2, I think we can agree, is I think we had a good episode 1. I think episode 2 knocked it out of the park. So things to tell the people that are watching and or listening. One, engineeringevolved.com if you want to kind of use that as a place to come find us. Pablo and I are both there. We have our contact information for how to get a hold of us individually or how to retain services from either of us individually. Also, if you want to go to engineeringevolved.com, I think we're going to try and get a way to do a topic suggestion there.
Yep.
If it's not there, then let's go ahead and leave it in the comment here. Along with if you are watching this live, I want you to put a hashtag live in here so that we know who watched it live. That'd be a great way to have that. And if you're watching this on a replay, do us a favor and please put hashtag replay on whatever platform you're watching. That really helps us kind of understand what's there. And if anybody has any question or wants to talk more about this or wants to hear this, please reach out and let us know. Pavel, what do you want to say kind of to close out the Engineering Evolved podcast episode 2?
Thanks everyone for watching. It was great to have you. It was great to speak with you, Brandon, again. And don't forget to give it a like and leave a comment. Once more, guys, managing stress is super important in our work. Like, be aware of it. Don't be afraid to talk about it, and find a way how to deal with it. Reach out to us. Look through the internet. Either will help. But just, guys, be aware that stress is not something. It's something that you will meet, but something that can be managed.
Absolutely, managing stress is probably one of the key soft skills that is not being taught, that needs to be discussed so that engineers can continue to do what they do at a highly effective level. So I think that's it. Pavel, episode 2 is in the books. And I am looking forward to seeing you next week. Again, everybody, next week, Wednesday, 5 p.m. I actually have to find out if I have a flight then. We might have to adjust next week. We'll have to see. But right now, next week is planned. Maybe what we'll do is we'll record. And it might be a recording next week. Might not be live. We'll have to see how that works. But next week, the podcast, there will be a podcast on Wednesday evening at 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific. See you all then. Pavel, wonderful conversation again, my friend.
Thanks. See you next time.
See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.